Alright, good morning. It's Sunday around 8 a.m. and we're going to do a FZ-10 install of 3DORGB. So first things first, let's tear it down. I've been told this console has a VP536a chip, so that should make things easy. Remember if this guy needs to come off, but let's go ahead and just crack it open. That should be it. Alright, I'll put my screws in this and set this aside. The VP536a chip should be a little simpler than the 101 chips, the BT9101, but essentially it should be fairly close. It looks like, yeah, there's a little tape here, so someone's opened this up at some point. We need to get to the bottom of the motherboard to put in the RGB DIN kit, the DIN kit, which you may not want to do, so if you don't, then ignore these instructions. But this is how I pull off the CD-ROM, because it seems kind of difficult. Really all you need is just a pair of used cutters. Don't actually cut down. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of put it in there and just pull up on these pins. Just pulling up just like that, not actually cutting. And it'll pop these pins right up. And then this guy comes up. Let's get this tape off. And then with that up, you can go ahead and remove these connectors. There's a few ribbon cables underneath. And on these type of connectors with the wires, I do not recommend pulling on the wires. You will likely rip the wire out. So, and this is a little latch lock back here. Let me get a pair of tweezers. Hopefully my head does not cover up the picture. Alright, that is unlatched. Another latch lock. So these two have little latches you have to pull up before the cable will come out. Alright. And then let's work on this cable. Yeah, so don't zoom out a little bit. So this cable right here, like, you don't want to pull on the cables. It's really easy to just snap the cables right off. So I am going to take a pair of these side cutters again, use them as like, yep, see, just kind of pried up on that. Alright, set this to the side. This plastic comes off. Also make sure the 3DO will store a little bit of power in the caps, and if you short something out, can fry the power board. So just make sure you turn it on and off after you've unplugged it, and that'll discharge those caps. Alright, let's pull this off. I'm gonna have a nice little part stack over here. Go ahead and zoom out because I'm not catching things I'm doing, so I just pulled this out from over here. It just sets in like this. And now let's remove some screws just all the way around the board. Get this heat shield out. Now, I've been told this has a VP chip, so it makes sense that someone has taken this plastic shield off, which it does. side. Let's go ahead and pull the rest of the motherboard out. Just a few more screws. That looks to be it. Alright. Set this over to the side, we'll get that later. So the first thing we're going to do is pull off this mini den right here, not mini den, pull off this RV or RF. Yeah, it's too early. So I like to do it, so there's essentially 3 pins and then 3 brackets holding this in place. I'm going to desolder these 3 pins. Let's see if we can get a little close up of this. I'm using a new camera mount right now, so this is the first time I'm doing it. So we're going to see how this is going to work. And I do have some little adjustment here, so let's do this. I guess that's going to work. Yep, so these 3 pins right here. That's as far as we can get on this camera. So I'm going to use a standard little, just a little bevel tip. Let's see if we can get that to zoom. And then I'm going to get some desoldering braid. I'm also going to get just some standard leaded solder. This is 6337. And I'm going to get a little flux. I'm going to use liquid flux because that is what I prefer. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit these edges with some solder. And right now my iron is at 320C. Could definitely go higher on it, and I probably will because these pins aren't touching anything critical. Desoldering sometimes it helps a little bit. So now the goal is here is to pull all the solder out of these pins and release them. I'm going to clean my tip. So we've got fresh solder on there, so that it should penetrate down. We're just going to try and suck it out. Normally when you do pins like this, they'll still stick. So you kind of need to make sure each pin is free. Sometimes what you can do, a simple way, is just grabbing the pin and get some better tweezers. And then heating it up, and put just a little more flux. Grabbing some tweezers and heating it up. And then keep wiggling it as you remove the heat. Sometimes that will work, but it's not working in this case. So let's try and get a little more desoldering braid in there. I'm going to do a little wiggle method as I do this too. Alright, so this one pin is free. Now if you have a desoldering gun, which I do have, that would be definitely the preferred way to do this. That would make this job a lot easier. Alright, so that pin's free. And if these pins are not free when you pull this out, you'll just rip the pads. And we don't necessarily need these for anything, but I'm not ripping pads if I don't have to. Which I don't think there's every reason to rip pads. We put a little more solder on this because it's not coming loose at all. And so we can restart the flux, restart the desoldering process. Hopefully it sucks up any solder that's down there. Wiggle this pin. Alright, so that pin's free. So you should see that all the pins are free now. Oh, this one's not. No, yeah, it is. Alright. So to get these three off, these are really tough to desolder. You'll likely never get all the solder out. So how I do it is, normally there's a little bit of a gap right there. I'll actually take my pair of side cutters, it's on camera, and I will try and cut that, which I just did. So now all you have is these two sections. So what we'll do is we'll put a little flux, we'll put some flux on that, I'll show later why, and I'm gonna put my iron at max, which is 400, which is pretty hot for this, but this tip is pretty small. I'm just going to put a little bit of leaded solder on these just to help pull this out. And then, see, I just pulled that. I'm not even on camera, son of a bitch. So I just put some leaded solder on these, and I literally just heated this up and pulled that piece out. Alright, so now we're going to, let's see here. Just gonna heat this up. And that just pulled right out. If you have that front piece in, it won't do that. I'm just gonna heat this up, pull it out. Now you got an RF unit, totally pulled. No pads pulled. So we need to make sure that all these holes are really clean, except for this one. We don't really care about that one, but I will clean it anyway. Oh, where did I? So let's just take a little bit of braid. The iron is still hot. It's still at 400C. So if you're desoldering this at 400C, you need to be careful not to push that hard, because you will just destroy the pads on the board. So be careful with that. Really not pushing hard at all. I'm just letting my iron, letting the heat do the work and pull it out. Alright, let's take a look. Grab a paper towel real quick. I'm going to pause this camera. Alright, back with some paper towel. I'm going to take some 99% isopropyl alcohol and just clean up these little areas I worked on. Let's take a look at the top of the pads. They look great. Alright, next step is while we got the board out. If you open up your mini den kit, there's going to be a few things. Got 4 PCBs, which we'll definitely use later. Switch we'll use later in the den, but then we've got two little, I should know what they're called, but we'll just call them pins for now. And those pins are just there for extra support. And what we're going to do is we're going to put these pins in these holes, and we're going to solder them in. And the pins need to be as close to the board as possible, to the board edge. So how I'll do this is I'll hold the bottom with my finger. Put a little flux on. Now I'm probably going to burn myself. So when I solder this top, I'm going to be super quick about it. Just trying to get my... So I've got some iron on this. These need to be the top of the edge, so I'm going to be very quick. Didn't burn, so I was definitely quick enough. I'm going to go back through and solder these again, but for now we're just kind of tacking them in place. We're going to do this with the other one. Like I said, they need to be as close to that way as possible. Alright. And so now I want to get them straight, because if you look at them, they're cockeyed. So let's get them straightened out. It's a little too far forward. Okay, that looks good. Make sure they look pretty good. And what you can do is a quick test. Maybe I'll get closer to the camera. Maybe you can help see this a little better. So there's the pins. And the pins, what they do is they're not necessarily needed, but I just know it's only going to take, you know, one person to push too hard on the mini DIN and break the connection. So these pins add a extra layer of security, because that means you got to pull the pins out to break this connection. So make sure that these base plates fit okay. This base plate right here, this big one, should be flush with the edge. So just make sure that your DIN's all matched up, and they do. So what I'm going to do is, while these are here, I'm going to put more solder on the bottom of these. But the goal on this is, you don't want to like totally loosen the pin, because then you'll lose your position. So I'm just going to be quick. That pin just moved a little bit, so I got it all the way loose, but we'll see if our mini DIN board will still fit just okay, because it barely moved. Yeah, it's fine. And while we're here with the board out, let's make this a little easier. So these pads up here are copper, but they've never been used. So sometimes solder does not like to flow. On the outside edge, just kind of scrape that with your iron. And this will allow copper to adhere, and that's just a lot easier to do with the board outside versus in the motherboard, or I mean in the case. Alright, so our pins are installed. And let's drop this back in the case. What case is on this side? Now we could have put the flex on while we had the case out, but it doesn't really matter. So let's flip this around. The flex on these is going to sit like this. It's different per board, so you're going to want to look at the board, or at you should be definitely following my instructions online. Those would be, this video is only a supplementary. Definitely use the instructions as like the master guide. So let's see here. Now I'm going to use a microscope to solder this flex on. But I can try and do it by, let's see here. Let's see if I can get a better angle. Let's see if I can because these are so small that you got to get your face down in here, and there's really no other way around it. So let's see if we can't make some adjustment. To where so look at this tight. Okay. Let's see. You guys see my head? Right about there. Alright, I can try this. Let's see how this works. I always use my microscope for stuff like this, so this is going to be interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'll put some liquid flux down here, just run all the paths. And on my iron, I'm going to leave my iron completely dry. No solder on it. And I'm going to turn my temp down to 300. And then so let's see. Yep, you can still see it. I'm going to align the bottom. And there's going to be some components in the way. So you got to kind of insert it at an angle. You're trying to get underneath the bottom. Hold this with some tweezers to make it a little easier. Okay. And get it. Let's try this again. Put your head in the way. Nope. Just trying to get the alignment just perfect. Alright, I'm going to have to put a little bit of solder on this, only just to get things flowing. Straighten it back out. These pins are pretty shallow on this chip. Normally you can butt up pretty nicely on it, but this particular one doesn't want to really necessarily butt up real nice. Let's get more flux on this. All I'm trying to do there is tack it in. Now you have, like, there's no other way to put this chip on without some type of magnification, because you've got to check your alignment, and like right now my alignment is off, and there's no way I can see that with my eyes. This chip needs to go to the right a little bit. So I just re-tacked and re-pushed it in. Now it's really close. It's really close on the right side in terms of alignment of the chip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack in this edge over here. So if you only have glasses, you need to, you know, touch the solder, relook at it. And then, so let's see, I tack this in over here. I'll try and pull this in just a hair. Let's take a look at it now. Still needs to be pulled in. And sorry, I did that underneath the microscope. It's just so easy to do it like that. Use lots of flux. I'm using liquid flux, so it evaporates extremely fast. So now I don't actually have any solder on my tip right now. I'm trying to use the solder that I've already put down, or solder that's on the bottom of this chip. And I'm just working blind because I can't see anything I'm actually soldering. So I'm just barely touching it. It's looking okay. I need to use a little bit of solder. And when you use such a low amount of solder, you don't have to really worry about bridge pins. Alright, let's take a look at that. For sake, I'm going to touch these up while I'm underneath the microscope, because I'll just be going back and forth for a wee bit of time. So I can just do this as I see it. The pins that need it. Looks like I've got one bridge pin, which isn't a big deal. We'll be able to pull that out. Just making sure that these are all good and connected. I mean, if you're doing any type of work like this all the time, I can't even exaggerate how much easier a microscope makes it. It's extraordinarily easy. It's just like, I don't know. I can't even think of a good scenario to match it up with. So now we're going to do this little extra leg over here. And if you got this aligned pretty well, this should already be lined up. So I'm barely going to put any solder on my tip. And we're just going to touch this. That should be it. That was pretty good. Let's see what it looks like under the scope. Still going to touch it up because I can see it like highly detailed, but I think it would have worked fine. Alright. So I'll put a little more solder on it. Remember, the main connection on the flex is not on the top. It's on the bottom. So everybody tries to make these nice little bridges. I just put too much solder on it. Everybody likes to make these nice bridges from the top of the end of the flex, which is cool. It does look nice, but most of the connection is actually on the bottom. So it may not look the best on the top, but it'll probably have a solid connection on the bottom. Alright. So here we are. Sorry for being underneath the microscope. Now, I'm going to go ahead and spray a little isopropyl alcohol. Take a little bit of a toothbrush and just slightly clean. If you're using a more corrosive flux, you 100% need to clean better. This flux I'm using barely leaves any residue. That's why I use it. It doesn't work nearly as good as other fluxes though, in terms of flowing solder. Alright, so now, according to the instructions, you should check for bridges. Now, if you have a microscope, that's a way to check it. If you don't, then you need to use a multimeter with fine tips and touch each pin. Otherwise, you could risk, damaging the unit. So 100% do that. That's not just because I skipped it. I didn't really skip it. I actually had, an 80x microscope and zoomed way in on those pins and able to see each one. Which, let me do that again just for posterity's sake. Yep. And a good thing I looked, because there is actually a bridge on one of these. And there's no way you could have saw that with your human eye. No way. Okay. Just did a little touch up because why not? Alright, so next thing is, so with this cleaned off, let's go ahead and zoom back out. We got our RGB board right here. It has already a installed pad on the bottom. This pad is extremely sticky to the tape, so just use some tweezers and pull it up. And you got a nice little thermal pad. This stuff from 3M is extremely strong. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert this first, clamp down, and then we're just going to set it on the board. So it's extremely strong, and when it touches air it actually gets stronger. So right now, like tomorrow, if you try and pull this off, it's going to be next to impossible. But there are ways. What you can do is release the flex and then twist the unit. Just don't try and pull. If you pull it, I mean, it'll probably be fine if you pull it, but just twist it. It just will make it work a lot easier to remove. So next steps are we need to do the stuff in the instructions for the VP chip, which I don't really remember. So we're going to read them. Says remove R166 if it exists. Okay, R166 does not exist. If the resistor is missing, you need to do a trace cut between the pads. So let's get out my X-Acto knife, and then we're going to cut the trace between 166. Which maybe you can see, maybe you can't. We'll do the best we can. And again, I normally do my trace cuts underneath the microscope because I can actually see kind of more what I'm doing. I can verify that the trace is missing, but I can't with that, so we're going to verify with a meter, which we just did. So it is cut properly, and now we need to run a wire from .166 to the pad. So let's grab some wire. I'm going to use 30 gauge solid core for this. Let's use green. Why not? also got some green solid core. Actually, no, I'm gonna do a different color. Maybe show it better on camera. Let's grab a yellow. So how I'm gonna run this is gonna go ahead and pull a little off the edge. A little too much. And to make things looks cool, I'm going to run this underneath this chip. Act as like a support brace. Put a little flux down here. We're going to do the pad on this side of 166. There are multiple different installs which are outlined in the install instructions. So you'll definitely want to be referencing that, because if you're doing a different motherboard or a different chip, it may be actually it will be totally different than this. Not totally, but different pad numbers, different stuff. Okay, let's retack that. Alright. Our wire is installed on that pad, so then we're going to run over here. Oh, bug. And then we're going to grab, this wire is going to go to the FZ-10. Alright, so that's cut. And this is the VP chip. We won't be wiring anything to the HV pads right here. That's only for the BT9101 encoders. So we are here. I'm going to go ahead and tin these pads up. All of them. Let's grab my iron. HC. There's a ground pad, but we don't need to use that because we're doing the DIN kit, and ground is supplied through the DIN kit already through the PCB, so it's not necessary to run a line for that. You can if you want to, though. We're gonna take this. I think for the other video I'm going to mount my camera on, because I'm going to do a video for the BT9101. I think I'm going to mount it on my microscope and solder the flex cable on that way, so you get a better view of what I'm doing. But last time I think people thought it was too easy because everything looked real big underneath the microscope, and I wanted to this time confirm that it's super small and not necessarily easy to do. Alright, now that we have the board in, that's essentially all you have to do to the 3DO part for the RGB board. Now we need to do the mini DIN kit. So I'm going to set this board to the side for a second. Sorry, my nose is running at the moment. Alright, so we've got 4 pieces. Actually 6 left. So this is the first one. It's thicker and it's got the holes for the switch. I'm going to put that in. And we're going to touch it with solder. Get my hands on this so don't burn yourself. I'm just touching fast. Alright, I'm going to push my iron up a little bit to get these grounds. You can tell now that I'm actually not touching the unit with my fingers anymore, because I probably would be burning myself. Alright, that looks okay. Let's go ahead and clean it up. Alright. Next we mount this guy. Like so. From the bottom of this to the bottom. And then how I do these is I kind of get them straight in my hand. Touch both sides. And then yeah, you're lining the holes up on the edge. So we're just going to take a little bit of solder. I'm just going to make sure these are still lined. I'm really just tacking into place at the moment, because we will do a final soldering later. A little flux on that. Because yeah, you don't want to put too much on, because it still needs to be flat at the bottom here for our next piece to go on, which goes like this. Just covers that hole up. And they don't have to be dead exact, but get them as close as you can. Side. Just gonna touch this one up a little better. Okay. And there's the mini din stack, all soldered in. So we're gonna take our board back. And then this is going to sit right in here. Just squeeze it in here. Alright. Pins are, one pin is off just a little bit, but it's okay. It will still work fine. Alright. So you're trying to line this edge up, so I'm going to pull this back a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and solder these all the way in. I recommend, it just kind of moved on me. You don't want to heat the pin up too much to where it falls out of the hole. So I am trying to solder the top of it for now to make a good connection, so even that the pin does come loose, it kind of can't because it's connected to the top. So now that it's connected at the top of both of these, I am going to go ahead and solder from the bottom. Have a nice little solder pad right there. If you really can see this, let's zoom in a little bit. The camera's not very great for zooming. I'll bring it up to you after I'm done. A little flux on this. It's not flowing how I want it to flow. show you what this looks like. So I've got solder on both of these pins. Alright, so now the next step, so our switch is hooked up, you grab our mini DIN, and it's going to sit in that little cubby like that. Now we want to align it so it's right in the center. So how I normally do it is I'll get it center aligned, and I'll just push it. That's a good picture, so I'll center align it, and then I'll push it in with my finger. I'm going to put some flux here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch tips to a big tip so I can really generate some heat, because it can take a little effort to get the solder flow on this. So I'm going to go up to a 370 or 380C. Now when you're this hot, you've got to be fast. If you kind of just float around and stay in one spot, you can do some damage to, like, let's say the plastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-tin this area right here. I'm actually not touching the mini DIN yet. Make sure it's centered. I'm pushing my fingers, and then I'm going to go ahead and just scrape that. And now I've got a good, actually I'm off a little bit. Let's fix that. Alright. Much better. Much better. Alright. So now that I've got that side kind of tacked in, see this. Bear with it with the camera. So I'm going to solder this little edge right here. I'm going to put more flux. Make sure you don't touch the outer case with your iron, because you'll melt the plastic. But scraping the mini DIN helps make it grab the solder. And I'm putting quite a bit of solder on. Because I want this to be a nice, secure connection. And then also secure it to the pin that's on that side. You guys can't even see anything I'm doing, I'm sorry. Okay, we are done soldering this mini DIN, so let's take a look to see what it looks like. Okay, here we go. So you can see it made contact all the way around. Now let's go ahead and clean this flux off. Or what should I say, burnt flux. It's one of the negatives about running your iron hotter is you will burn flux. So we want to get all that off. Okay, that's pretty good. Alright, so this is what we look on the outside. The switch works pretty well. And we got our mini DIN. So next steps are soldering this guy on. So this will plug in. Move the camera here. So this guy plugs in just like that, facing up. So we're going to go and solder that in. I'm going to go back to my medium tip here. Nice medium bevel tip. Oops, it's the wrong one. It's this one. And I'm going to drop back down to, you know, not 380. I'm not trying to clean up burnt flux all the time. So there, since we're in, we'll just go ahead and just solder this on. Alright, there we are, soldered on. While we're here, I guess we should pre-tin these pads. There's a ground pad, but it's not necessary. There's also a plus 5-volt pad. Depending on your setup, you probably don't need that, but depending on who you, depending on how you connect it, you might. So we are going to do look at my mini Denny instructions. You can use the existing 5-volt hole for the RF to do that, so we're going to hook that up real quick. To do that, I need to pull the board out. And then I'm going to use, for wiring up to RGB, I'm going to use some alpha wire. This is 28 gauge multi-strand wire. So this is not solid core. It's just Teflon coated, so it looks real thin, but it's equivalent to, you know, say the kind of standard ribbon cable that everybody uses. So I need to get the plus 5-volt on this. It's this hole. So let me get some measurements of my wires here. And this is just kind of just a little, I'm going to go and zoom out. This is just kind of time consuming tasks. One hole. The reason I pulled the board out was because I'm going to solder on the bottom side of this wire. Just makes it easier. And with this mini-tin setup, you can easily pull the board in and out, unlike some other stuff where you're stuck with it. Unless you unhook, unless you desolder the RGB stuff. Alright, so with that in, I'm going to go ahead and put a few screws back in, because the board's not going to be coming back out. So I'm going to secure it over here. I'm going to secure it on these screws that were needed. I think that was it. bunch of screws that weren't in. They conveniently have a little screw symbol. We can thank the PCB engineers for that. So that's helpful. Alright, so now that is in, I gotta run some wires from here to here, and then also from ground to power. So audio to audio. So let's do audio first. I'm just gonna get a little bit of length of wire. And I'm just gonna pick audio up on these channels right here. And there's two little filters. I'm going to pick them up right on the filters at the end, just to keep it simple. So I'm just going to put a little bit of leaded solder on these. That'll help my wires want to connect. And pre-cut all these, and I'm also going to put some real tiny heat shrink tubing. So I'm going to put some of these through that just to make it look nicer. I'm just going to go underneath this channel. This is what I've been doing on previous installs as I was testing. I feel like it looks pretty nice. There's a little channel here, so I'm going to take this one. Just going to go down there. Two in. Alright, just put these back up. Let's put this back around. Sorry, I'm not used to modding with a camera, so I don't really pay attention to what you guys see, and I should be doing a lot better job than that. These guys are going to get bent up. We obviously want to make sure we get the left and right correct. Alright, so let's see here. I'm going to use a meter for this. My meter is going to always beep, likely. Probably not for audio, I guess. So this is left. Process of elimination tells us that this is right. Oh, come on, turn my iron down. It's too much heat on this board. How can I get this to line up? There we go. Let's tuck this wire over. Okay. Let's see who keeps text messaging me. Nobody. Alright. Now we're going to do RGB hookups. let's get how we feel like I'm going to run this. Probably going to run it around like this maybe. So that should be long enough. So what I'm going to do, so you'll need to do, you know, RGB and then sync and then one for the 240p switch. So I'm going to get out 5 wires, all the same length. If you do ribbon cable, it's probably a little faster because it's color coded. Which I do have some ribbon cable, but I like this stuff. Okay, so here we've got 5 wires. And now I need to, got some more shrink tubing right here. Put all these on here. Kind of over the camera so hopefully you can see too what I'm doing. Just push these on. I actually don't even, on these that are kind of a close fit, I don't even heat shrink them. Like that one that went on there, it's doing its job, it's just keeping the wires next to each other. One more, I don't even need this last one. Alright, it's not going on, so we're just going to ignore it. Alright, so I'm going to strip all these wires on this end. Alright, all are stripped. I'm going to solder each one to each one of these pads. Put just a hair more flux down. Looks like you guys can still see. I'll run these wires over this way. Figure out how I'm going to run them. I think I'm going to do it like that. I think that looks pretty nice. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is remove the tips on each one of these, and it's only because I need to meter them out. recut them each to size. Alright, so first one I'm going to do is the the input for the 240 switch. Come on. Is it really the last one I'm checking? No, it's not making good contact. Alright, yeah, meter works. Oh, is that it? No. Alright, so it's this wire right here. And the 240 switch goes down here. It's not on the DIN stack, it is on the DIN stack, but it's not on the DIN board. So remember the location of that wire. We'll put a little bit of solder on this. And we're just gonna solder this guy on. Okay. Let's check our wiring, how it's going to work out. Do something different here. If you couldn't tell, I'm a little... Actually, I'm crazy when it comes to wiring. I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to put that back through. I'm going to make another... this over these four. Alright, here we go. So our standard length is going to be this 240p wire. Everything else is going to kind of be designed around that length as we build this cable. So now we need to do some measurements, so we're going to do sync as the next one. Alright, here's sync. Make sure my links are correct, because if you mess up, you gotta put a new wire in. There's sync. Now the next one's for the RGBs. They are going to have continuity in all of them. I got lucky though, because they're, depending on your meter, it may beep, but they're going to be 150 ohms apart from one to the other. So if your meter beeps on that setting, you need to actually look at your meter and see what the resistance actually is. Since all these RGB lines have 75 ohm pull downs, they will read to each other 150 ohms apart. That one is 151, this one is 0. And then this should be the last one. I will still double check it though, just to make sure I didn't get something else backwards. That one was red. correct. Alright, let me get these all spaced out how I like them. Alright, I'm going to use my hot air where I'm going to heat shrink these up. There we go, this is pretty much installed. So at this point, I'm going to clean up any flux residue that I have left over. Take a little of my brush, just clean these up. I say the install's over, the install's not over, but it's close. The mod's in. So now the first thing is, so on these FZ-10s, you don't need the disk drive connected to see video, but on the FZ-1s you do. You'll just get a black screen without the disk drive. So let me get set up here with, let's test this video, so hold on one second. Alright, just got everything set up. So I've got a 8-pin mini DIN here, hooked into an OSSC, and let's turn her on. I've got 480i mode. Everything looks good there. And swap to 240p. And yep, we are good to go. So everything is looking great. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back off. Now if you want to see something, so look at this LED right here as I turn it, flip it on, so I just unplugged it. See that LED turned on? That's it discharging the caps. So that's why you can short the power board out, is if you're tinkering around and there's still power on the rail. So, and we're going to have to cut the mini DIN likely. I haven't actually done an FZ-10. So yeah, so what we're going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut this shield, looking for a marker. I'm going to cut this shield actually right here to right around here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to notch this out like that. These boards actually, these metal shields aren't even really used for anything. They were there for FCC regulations. So you could just not even install this board at all, this top metal shield. If you didn't want to cut this out, it would still be perfectly fine. And just there's strict EMI testing, and they just encapsulate all that stuff just to avoid any problems. So, but I am going to pause the camera again while I go cut this out. I'm going to use a metal cutoff wheel that's in my garage. So I'm actually going to go out to here, I think. So I will be back. Alright, got this metal shield cut. And make sure I'm not pinching any wires. And it is good. So let's go ahead and put this back together. Essentially, we're pretty much done. Oops, that's not a screw hole. That goes to one of the long screws that holds everything together. Man, I cannot guess right. Let me look inside these holes. I got one. Two. here. And this is probably a screw. Alright, that's it for the screws. We're going to go ahead and put our laser back on. I'm going to do these guys first. Already got these flaps pulled up. Let's do this one first. Well, sorry for people that had to assemble these all day. Clearly there's probably a trick. Alright, there's those. I have that in right. Just doesn't look right, but it is. Nice little guy right here. Got this guy coming to the top. Go ahead and bend these prongs back down. And these just snap right back in. And then we just need our top half. And don't forget this guy. Oh shoot. Alright. Oop, I forgot this guy. It goes like that. Alright, a few more screws. We are done. And then after you get it all back together, go ahead and make sure it all works. If you're installing for somebody else, verify the disk drive and everything works, and you are good to go. Thanks for watching.